at Petersen.
No.
Yes, we can. Watch.
So I started at the very 6-month temp contract.
Nothing wrong with Hollywood that good movies wouldn't fix.
Exactly.
And it's the same in the car business. There's
Pretty much
nothing wrong with any car company that great products won't fix.
Osalima. Henry Ford, please, here. Welcome, sir. Henry Ford III. Tom Peters. Felix Holst. Ralph Vigio. Mr. Hurley Hayward. Craig Jackson. Peter Brock. World champion drifter Vaughn Gittin Jr. And the closest thing to James Bond, Bob Lutz. So you're saying it's kind of started from crab.
You know what? You could say I was inspired from eating crabs.
Okay, so now I think the interview's over. We got literally crabs to world champion drifter.
Done. It was that easy.
Yeah, thank you and good night.
Go home and eat some crabs.
I want to welcome you to the Petersen Automotive Museum for our next Inside the MotoMan studio. With that, I want to welcome my very special guest, the former vice chairman of General Motors, world champion drifter, the design director of Hot Wheels, VP of Pleasure Design, the most winning long-distance race car driver in the world, the CEO of Barrett Jackson Auctions. He's more of a story than he is a design director.
Everyone remembers their first ride in either a Corvette or a Camaro.
So in a little bit of Hollywood magic, we can actually make Henry Ford appear here at Petersen.
No.
Yes, we can. Watch.
So I started at the...
Bit of a technical snafu there. Sorry about that, guys. Welcome to the Petersen Automotive Museum, and welcome back to Inside the MotoMan studio. So we have had quite a journey over the past year and a half, something like that, where we've talked to some interesting people shaping the car world. But today, our guest is someone different. I'm going to start by asking you guys a question, because you guys know I like asking questions to start these shows. When you think of New Zealand, what do you guys think about? Lance, what do you think about when you think New Zealand? Midget sprint cars. Madison, what do you think about when you think of New Zealand? Rain. Well, most people think about Middle Earth. But, believe it or not, do you think about dynasties when you think about New Zealand? Nothing, yeah. Figured you guys wouldn't go for that one. But follow me on this one, because New Zealand produces dynasties, but not like the Shang, Zhao, or Qin dynasty. They produce racing car dynasties. That's what we're here to talk about today. So, now, I would love it if my father had a car like this. He had cool cars, but not that. Or a car like this that breathes fire. But, or actually, we talked about bad hair. Well, how about this for bad hair? If your uncle was spraying champagne on you when you were a baby. But think about this. Follow me for a minute. If your uncle gets to spray champagne on you after winning an IMSA championship, wouldn't you think that's like the family business? They're going to hand you the keys to a race car when you turn like 13 and become a race car driver, right? Right? Anything? Well, it turns out my guest today, his first race car didn't look like the normal race car. Not even a car, is it? My guest today, he didn't quite go the journey of all racing dynasties. Like, I personally think there is an international law that if your last name is Andretti or Petty, you must race a car. You can't, like, if you want to become an architect, that is not allowed. Well, my guest today decided he was going to take the very long journey to become the man he is today. So with that, I want you guys to help me in joining the global Rallycross and Formula Drift world champion, Rhys Millen. Welcome, sir. Welcome to the Petersen. Come on, guys, Rhys Millen. This man literally drives cars sideways and rolls them end over end and gets paid for it. You need to be very excited about this.
A little bit like that, yeah.
A little bit like, oh, we're going to find out it's a lot like that. Yeah. Not just bad hair pictures. So we talked about Middle Earth, which is where you come from. That started back in 1972. What was it like to start in 1972 in Middle Earth?
Not much different than what it is today. New Zealand as a country is incredible. Had an amazing family life growing up there, but never really considered living there. Moved to the US in 1990, and prior to that, everything was rain, sprint cars, sheep, and riding my bike around.
Well, you started earlier with bike, didn't you?
Very early. My grandfather was a big influence in my career in biking. Starting BMX racing at 8 years old. Prior to that, a couple of years earlier, my parents had separated. My father had followed his career, moving to the US, and my mum, grounded in her roots and close to her family in New Zealand, decided that she wanted to stay. And then living with my grandparents and riding bikes with him on the weekends, and then starting a competition element in BMX racing at 8 years old.
At 8 years old. So was this your first race vehicle here?
I'm sure that's one of many that I broke when I was younger, yeah. That was, wow.
That's a theme for you, breaking things. We're going to find that out later.
Yeah, that looks like my daughter right now, actually. Curly blonde hair. Where did you find that?
Well, it seems if you tell your wife that you're going to embarrass you on stage in front of the public, she's very willing to give off pictures.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And then I had to find some myself, which we're going to get to.
Okay, great.
Yes. But you had said your dad went to the U.S. for racing, and tell us, for the avoidance of doubt, who is your father?
My father is Rhys Millen, an incredible father figure, talent behind the wheel, and businessman. You know, he started as a surveyor in New Zealand. That was his first job, and he got to drive many of the gravel roads in New Zealand on his way to work. And at that point, also as a hobby, was surfing, and he found again that driving to the surfing locations, he had more fun sliding cars around on the road. He did a lot of hill climbs, and had his first contract with Mazda in New Zealand in the early 70s, where he sold some of his early vehicles, which were based on a Myers-Mank beach buggy, which he had put a 2-liter V6 and mid-mounted it, and was crushing all the Ford factory teams with this home-built car until they outlawed it. And then he got his first contract again with Mazda, which was based around the Mazda dealer team program, where he got a dollar towards the program for every new vehicle that was sold over and above the previous year. He turned that into a successful motorsport program and won the championship in New Zealand in rallying 75, 76, and 77, and then 78 moved to the US.
So that's kind of unusual that a race car driver would participate in the business side of. What was his ethos in that? You know,
I think, you know, in that era, and especially living in New Zealand where you are quite isolated, there's so many talented people, not even in motorsport, that have come out of that country because you just have to be creative with what your surroundings, and it's very limited with what surrounds you. Yeah. And it was a game of survival. His passion was for driving, and the only way you were going to achieve it was, you know, making it a job. And the opportunity to turn that hobby of racing into a profession, and he was able to do it.
Then he went from surveying to the U.S. and decided to do something pretty spectacular.
Yeah, and in New Zealand, you know, referencing what you're seeing here, this is 1995, the year after he set the all-time world record in the Toyota Celica at Pikes Peak. He grew up doing hill climbs. My uncle Steve and my dad would do hill climbs sometimes every weekend on a Saturday and a Sunday, and they looked a lot alike. So they would pay one entry fee, which was $1, and they would split it themselves 50 cents, run behind the flax bush, change into the driving suit, put the helmet on, and blast up the same piece of the road in an old Hillman Cobb, which is pretty much like a really small station wagon with maybe 50 horsepower. And they would read newspaper articles of this famed hill climb in the United States, Pikes Peak. And, you know, that was a lifetime goal for him, and he achieved that in 1981, being the first rally car to run up Pikes Peak, then all dirt road, which sustained itself to about 2000 as a dirt road.
Yeah, I think we need a moment of silence for that dirt road, man.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be a dirt road.
Asterisk, that one.
Yeah. Let's actually see how much your uncle and your father looked alike.
Yeah, that is my Uncle Steve, Sholem Racing, who he moved to the US and became a partner as business with Steve Millen Sports Parts, Dave Sholem, and that was back in the Atlantic days. Back in New Zealand, I think they actually even ran a Rolt RT4, winning the New Zealand Championship and then moving over here. Although starting in New Zealand with a very similar background in rallying and hill climbing, kind of took very different paths. My Uncle Steve became the road racer, and my father stayed in the world of off-road. Speaking of road racing. Yep, very successful program with Cunningham Racing that my Uncle Steve ran with the IMSA series, the 300Z, that they won the championship in many times, and even went to Le Mans with the GTP cars as well. So, yeah, he was very skilled, and no one could touch him in the wet from that background of rallying. Did you ever get to drive this car? No, not that one. I saw it test one of the very first times that I moved to the US, but was very aware of his success in the vehicle, but never got to drive that one. You need to be nicer to your uncle, man. I would love to drive that thing. That'd be nice. He needs to be nicer to me and let me drive it. Yeah. Well, in fairness, I shouldn't have to ask. Do you let him drive your Hyundai? Yeah, I'd let him drive it if he could. If he could. Now, he drove, okay, so we're seeing this car, and actually before you came on stage, the audience got to see this car breathe fire. But before that, he was driving this fire-breathing Nissan. What was this? Yeah, I think you would call that a Tirana. Who made it back then? I don't know. It's probably GM Australia, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And I'm going to say that's actually a stock car. That's actually my dad there. Yeah. I can tell by those sweet lamb chops that he's got running. And there used to be a local sprint car track called Waikaraka Park, and you would come up for Saturday night stock car racing, and this was, you know, one of the many vehicles that he would drive for other teams. That was not a vehicle he owned personally, but it was, you know, the passion for the drive and driving nearly every day of the week that he could. I think we need to speak to the Hyundai folks and put in your contract for next year that you need to have facial hair like that. Well, we are coming up on Movember, so say maybe I can whip something out for the final in Vegas. I think there should be a bonus on that. Okay, let's do that. Jim, let's put that in the contract. We're bringing it back. We're bringing it back because you're bringing the lamb chops back. Does that kind of rhyme, I think? Yeah. Well, let's get your uncle in here and figure that out. Now, a little background for the people that don't know racing and racing families. If my name is, as I said, Andretti or Petty, when I'm like 3 years old, I get a go-kart, and I learn how to race. Now, when you were 3, were you given a go-kart and learned how to race? My dad said he built me a go-kart, so to speak, not powered by an engine, but more of what we would call a trolley. But then, apparently, when I was 3 or 4, I left it out in the middle of the driveway, and he ran over it. So I don't recall it, but I guess I did get something really cool. But no, not a real race car. Well, it seems as if this was your racing. So I mean, we know you as a guy that drives cars and crashes them and turns them around and goes sideways. That's not a car. No, it's not. It's lacking all of those elements of excitement that I enjoy today, but it's really bringing back to my roots in competition. And again, my grandfather was a huge influence in my life being younger, living with my grandparents and my mum, and based around BMX racing and then going into mountain bike racing, finishing in New Zealand under 17 champion. And then even when I was younger, 8 and 9 years old, runner-up for Australia versus New Zealand in BMX racing. And really it was, without even knowing the foundation that I was building in my career, is competition and reading roads, changing terrains, and manipulating your body for a point of balance to find the fastest way down a trail, through the woods and whatever. and that was really what became, unbeknownst to myself, is my passion for racing in an environment that is has the conditions, sliding a car control, the transfer from bikes to cars.
You and I are a similar age, 26.
26, yeah.
We agreed on this.
Good one.
And I'd like to say that I too was a BMX racer back in the day. I had my Redline 600A, man.
Nice.
Long Island, like Rallycross kind of thing. However, on Long Island, we didn't have racing that involved this.
Yeah. Wow, that is New Zealand at its finest there. Toi flax bushes and a course that went through a huge culvert that was, I'm going to say the culvert was about half a mile long. You just rode into the black, and as long as you could hear the tires splashing in the water, you knew you're at the bottom of the tunnel. And then you'd follow the light to the end and crawl out of this bank and continue. That was one of the New Zealand Championship rounds.
Yeah. I think we need to poll the audience at this point. Is it just me, or does that look like Middle Earth? How long, well, not how long, but what age did you actually decide to pick up and move across the Pacific?
I had been visiting my dad in the US since I was 6 years old, once a year on our summer vacation, your winter, or my winter now. So for 4 to 6 weeks at the end of every year, I'd come and visit my father. It was our summer break, so pretty much from 6 to 17, 11 years, I never saw summer. Yeah, and at that point, got exposed to the US, would come over and work in his shop because that was his busiest time of the year. While he wasn't racing, he was building new cars for the season, something that I experience now. And at age 17, had the opportunity to move to the US full-time, finishing high school in New Zealand and coming over here to go to college and work for him part-time.
Okay. Now, we're still wondering how we get to this race car thing.
Yeah.
This still doesn't look like a race car.
No, not at all.
By this time, we're, what are we, 17, 18, 19?
19 now?
19.
Yep.
So you, in the world of racing, you are a grandfather at this point, at 19.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't even have my license when I was 18. I still had a bike. I could ride from Newport Beach to Orange Coast College.
Driver's license? You didn't have a driver's license?
I got it at 19.
Wow.
Late 18, 19. I had my bike. I didn't need anything else. So, yeah, I'd ride from the house in Newport Beach to Orange Coast College to Huntington Beach to work and then ride home. So I had 30 miles a day.
Kiwis are very resourceful.
That was training. It didn't cost me anything. I didn't have any money. So, yeah, I took liberty of staying in that world probably longer than I would have wanted to until the point that I got exposed to the speed and power of cars. And this here was kind of my first taste prior to getting into motorsport and getting into the film industry. I drove this beach buggy, which was rented off a friend in San Diego, and we would go around shooting all the Marlboro commercials with the late Tony Scott, Jake Scott, and others. And my job was to drive this off-road camera car. We had a gentleman in the back seat that held a steady cam, and we chased wild buffalo, horses through Montana, Utah, Eureka, Northern California, all around the U.S. That became my job.
So really, you are the Marlboro man.
I wouldn't go that far. Being 26, I got a few years before I get leathered up. Yeah.
But how do you go? So you don't have a driver's license. How do you then go from no driver's license to literally, effectively camera car driving, which is not easy. I can tell you that from experience. At
that point, it got a little older. Obviously, you have an interest in girls. Not that I started that late. I started a little earlier than that.
Started at 21, right?
You need a mode of transport. So I'm like, I really like this girl. She lives 10 miles away. I can't ride my bike there and pick her up or anything. So I was forced to get a car in a sense, and at that point got in a little trouble on the streets. And my dad took me out in one of his early rally cars just to see what I had. And full circle back to the bike riding, that's when he was kind of magically blown away by how quickly I adapted to feeling the car underneath me, the controlling the car, using the weight and the momentum to place the car and position the car on the road on a dirt road.
So if we're following along here, you're getting into your 20s, you finally have a driver's license, you're dating girls, you're in university. But what else are you doing in your life at that point?
Yeah, there you go. That kind of sums it up. The murder van, as we referred to it as.
So I'm sure you got a lot of dates picking them up in this thing.
I separated with an early girlfriend, the first that I met in New Zealand, or first that I met in the US, and she said, good luck trying to find a new date driving that thing, which I drove for 2.5 years. It was my personal form of transportation, and it was also my parts runner for starting my business, aftermarket accessories company, which I used my father's name because who was I? And he had a great reputation in motorsport and the aftermarket industry, so I started a division called Rhys Millen Motorsport. He had Rhys Millen Racing, and we turned that now into what is RMR and R Millen Motorsport.
So what year was the murder van?
That would have been 94?
So your dad at this point was Pikes Peak champion, world record setter by this point?
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Okay. And what were you doing? Like, what was the business?
The business was started off very, very small. The year before, actually, I had raced a Toyota Supra that was gifted to me by Toyota. Was an ex-pace car for the Long Beach Grand Prix. And we built some parts for it, primarily for me to race up Pikes Peak. And then Super Street magazine did an article on the vehicle. And I started getting a bunch of phone calls to the shop, people wanting parts for their Toyota Supra. So I was like, well, this is interesting. I can make a downpipe and an exhaust and a chassis brace and a couple of other pieces. So I started making those, and then unbeknownst to me, it grew and grew and grew, and we added different models under the Toyota brand, again with my father's association to the brand. And I was like, hey, I'm actually making some money off this. I can actually go racing now.
Let's step back here. Again, you and I have similar paths, the Radline 600A, and now I had a Supra, but Toyota didn't gift one to me. How did you get a Supra gifted to you?
Yeah, that was pretty remarkable, something that I did not expect, but kind of earned in an odd way, I guess you could say. The previous year was my first year at Pikes Peak. I had a vehicle that my father raced 3 years earlier that...
This one?
Yeah, there it is. That's my first race car, a Mazda MX-6. And it was sitting in the corner. It wasn't much of anything, and I wanted to go rallying, so I turned it into a rally car, built the car, suspension, and...
Did you keep it front-wheel drive?
Yep, it was a front-wheel drive 2.2-liter turbo, and we entered it into the SCCA rallying, and I painted it, rolled it, painted it, rolled it, painted it, rolled it many times. And the week before I was to do Pikes Peak for my first year, I rolled it again. There it is out front of my dad's house in Newport Beach. And that was my first taste of rallying. I rolled it the week before Pikes Peak, and he called me. He was racing in Indonesia, I think, at the time, doing part of the Asia Pacific Rally Championship. And he said, you think you're going to get that thing fixed? And I was like, not a chance. I don't have any money, and I don't have the time. And he's like, well, how would you feel about driving one of my old Group B rally cars? And at that point, I couldn't believe he was offering me the keys to that thing, although it didn't have keys. I just needed to figure out how to start it. So yeah, at 19, first year up Pikes Peak, which was entered in my car, we changed to a different category, the Pikes Peak Open division, and drove his four-drive tube-frame RX-7, and won there, Rookie of the Year, and beat the competition by 1 second, I think it was.
So just to back up what you're saying here about this rolling thing, Rhys is not lying to us about this. If you look at this picture, look at the roof of his MX-6. And he was still racing the car with the roof looking like that.
Yeah, that's at a rally sprint that took place in Glen Helen, where they typically run motorcycles, really sandy surface, as you can see. And I actually think, I'll admit to this, I think I rolled twice in that one day. So the second one was nowhere as damaging as the first one, because I figured, well, I've already done it. And we won the first round, and then the second one, it didn't start after the second roll.
So have you ever watched like those war movies, like where it gets to the point where there's like the big challenge, and they get the old leathery war hero like the Marlboro Man? He's like, kid, just drive through it, just push on through. You take this very seriously. You just roll a car and just keep going.
You're still in the mode of competition, the element of competition, and you know there's a finish line. The car just landed on all four wheels. You open your eyes. You're wiping the windshield glass out of them, and you're taking off. And at that point, you'll assess the damage when you cross the finish line.
Did you learn that in that tube in Middle Earth?
Yeah. Hot Wheels trick. Yeah.
And here's the RX-7.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Number 96 in 1992.
Yeah.
First year up Pikes Peak, and full circle,
winning
in the RX-7. That's what enabled me to get gifted for the following year a Toyota Supra.
You know what? I'm starting to think that I should have grown up in New Zealand, because I raced BMX, I had a Supra, and I had an RX-7. But I don't race cars for a living.
No, well, you rode a red line. I rode a Talker, so maybe that had something.
So that's where I went wrong. It was damn it. I love that 600A, man.
And that image there is, well, you can see if you go to the next shot.
This back one?
No, the other way. Yeah, that one's got some damage on it as well.
Look at that.
There's a great story behind that one.
Yeah. That's an all-track turbo?
That is the Toyota Celica all-track turbo.
It was so cool. Didn't
a
have
whopping 214 horsepower, and I think you could do about 90 mile an hour in second gear because the gear ratios were just perfect. Not. And in the case of this one, where the rear quarter panel is slightly modified and the rear window is slightly missing, was stage 1, turn 1. Warned and just reminded of this last week when I was in Seattle by the event organizer. Stage 1, turn 1 is a downhill, tight right, slippery, off camber with a big tree on the outside. And for my own peace of mind here, and to back up why I went off the road, I had changed the brake booster in the car so you could left foot brake. And you would hollow out the brake assist booster and lengthen the rod to the master cylinder, enabled you to keep a turbocharged car on boost, a technique quite commonly used in the world of rallying and turbocharged cars. But Dad forgot to tell me one point of valuable information, that when you do that, you need to re-drill a hole for the clevis for the master cylinder rod to change the motion ratio, so the pedal change it all, put it on the trailer, go to the race, first corner, no brakes. Here comes that tree real quick.
Oh, so this wasn't done in the fab shop?
No, that was modified by nature. Yeah.
The tree jumped out at you. Now, back to this RX-7. This is you back in the day with your dad.
Yeah, that is my first opportunity to ride in that car at age 15 in New Zealand. He had brought the car back down to New Zealand to do a hill climb, quite a famous hill climb in New Zealand called Ashley Forest Rally Sprint. And my first kind of taste of competition at 15, sitting next to him, really not having to do anything, but per the rules it was required, you had to have a navigator. Sat next to him, and we won a hill climb down there quite commandingly. And the first time to break their record there was like 1 minute 2 seconds, and we did a 59-second run. So yeah, it was a great opportunity. Really didn't know what was going on, really didn't value what was happening, because my passion was still in bikes at that time.
Yeah. But I'd like to point out, if you can see in that picture, on the left door is your father's name, and on the right door is your name.
Yeah.
How do you like that? Before you even got a race car.
Exactly. And who would have known that would have been, gosh, 86, 87.
Yeah.
And then, I wouldn't even known at that point that 5 years later I'd be racing that car at Pikes Peak.
Oh, that's an awesome car. I love that car. There you are again. And what's this?
That's a sweet haircut. That's what that is.
Told you we'd have bad haircuts.
And some nice khaki pants by the looks of it, too. Yeah, Pikes Peak, that's the Penrose Trophy, kind of held by the organization. Penrose being the first person to climb Pikes Peak in 1921, or the first year they actually held a race there, and had my name engraved on that as a class winner for that year in 1992, Rookie of the Year. So yeah, exciting opportunity.
And here's the generations.
Yeah, that's going back some time as well. Using one of Dad's old suit, covering up his name with a patch of my name because his name was embroidered underneath it, kind of being like the red-headed stepchild recycling items. And yeah, that was the year that we both raced. I had the Toyota Supra in the high-performance showroom stock division, and he ran the Toyota Celica, defending the record that he set the year before. Yeah. So a little hand-me-down helmet, shoes, suit, and hat.
Was there any Celica underneath that thing? I mean, that car was. It was
not much. I think probably. Well, I wouldn't even say the windshield. Maybe the grill logo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It said Toyota on it. I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And let's talking about Supras. Got to pay some homage to your Supra.
And there it is. And you can see that's definitely at the top of Pikes Peak on a practice day, because that is not salt on the road, that is snow. And that is a frozen dirt road. And that was really the first opportunity, as I mentioned before. My first race car in rallying was a front-wheel drive vehicle. And that was to be a transition into four-wheel drive vehicles. And then I rapidly got put into this rear-wheel drive vehicle, and I had to learn oversteer, which I wasn't too familiar with in an environment on Pikes Peak. It's something you want to learn really, really fast. But we ran the high-performance showroom stock division, two-wheel drive, basically a production-based vehicle. Tires were essentially the only thing that was free in competition elements, and the rest was based around safety. But it was a great opportunity to learn wheel slip, effectively how much throttle you could give, in a sense, trying to build as much vehicle momentum. And it's still something that we use today, even in the global rallycross, when you're dealing with a slick tire on dirt. And that goes back to the foundation of driving that DOT tire on those conditions.
Okay. So that was Pikes Peak, very cool. You're doing all this racing. What is this?
I think I need to go to the bathroom right now. That's, wow.
Not so much bad hair, but you didn't do that, obviously.
No, that's one of the first TV commercials that I ever did. I think it was a Porsche Generations Gap, introducing the new 911 and reflecting on its heritage.
Take her out in the murder van?
I'm married now, so I won't reflect on who that is. Actually, unfortunately, I don't remember who that is. Yeah, we were dressed in period, in a period car, and one of the first opportunities to work with more of a father figure than a great friend, Jeff Zwart, who I just worked with on Tuesday as well on another job. And he has a great heritage with the Porsche brand, and is by far the most talented car director I've ever worked with before. So yeah, that was a job done many years ago now, when I was younger.
Now let's step back.
24.
Your first, 24, exactly. Yeah. Your first car stunt gig, what was it?
In the commercial world, it was actually for Nissan, and it was for the Maxima, and it was a campaign called Zero, None Like It. And we did a huge, about 90-mile-an-hour slide across the dry lake, Red Lake, just outside of Phoenix or Flagstaff, and won a tremendous amount of awards in the industry. And it was the first time that I actually got to show this skill set, not that others didn't possess it, like my father and my Uncle Steve were really leaders in the commercial industry, but at my age, the opportunity to show a skill set. And from then, it went from being a side business to being a full-time career doing commercial driving.
And you're still doing the fab work.
Sorry?
You're still doing the fab work as well.
Yeah, for sure. Running the shop, building parts, building the foundation of what I had started, and then going out on weekends and so forth, and shooting car commercials. Outside of car commercials, it would have been a feature film.
But that wasn't your first ever stunt gig, your stunt gig, was kind of like a dual role. You filled two roles.
I'm afraid of the photo that you're going to bring up.
I wish I had a photo of
Okay.
this. Yeah, your wife wouldn't give me this photo.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Sorry, your question again?
So this was the Maxima thing was not your first full-on. Someone paid you to operate, let's say, a vehicle on film, or vehicles. Maybe that gives it away. Man, you are getting old. 26 is not suiting you well.
Yeah, no, I'm not picking up what you're throwing down.
Bicycles.
Oh.
And cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody have some Alzheimer's drugs in the room? Because I think you need some.
Yeah. Yeah, my very first commercial that I did was for Ford with Jeff Zwart, the same director that I did this job with, and it was called Ford Fun Places, Fun Cars. Back then it was a Ford Ranger, Ford Probe, and I can't remember the other models as well, but it was shot in Seattle. And at that point there was a casting for, they wanted a mountain bike rider, they needed a stunt driver, and they needed on-camera talent. And I went in there and they're like, do you have any experience? And I said, well, yeah, I've driven cars a bit. I race mountain bikes, and this is driving a car and this is smiling and acting's pretty bad, but what do you think? Got the job, eliminated the other people that they were probably pretty upset at me, but I ended up being on-camera talent, did the mountain bike stunts, and drove the car. And I still have that on a VHS tape. But that effectively got me into the industry doing mountain bike stunts that exposed me to the car world as well.
Funny, I didn't get that VHS tape. I think we're going to need to follow up with
that.
Yeah. But then you did something different after, as you're getting down the road here. What's different about this?
This was Pikes Peak, 1999. And it was the first time that I was paid to do a race. Everything prior to this point had been what I had saved up, what I had achieved, and using my own tools, I guess you could say. It was a company, .coms were really, kind of exploding then. There was a company called GX Planet that had an automotive division called UPRD, Under Pressure Research and Development, and they used motorsport to promote their online parts catalog. It was a Skyline R33, right-hand drive imported from Japan, and they hired me, they paid me, I couldn't believe it, to race their car at Pikes Peak. And we built a great relationship out of that, winning that year in '99, and then building a Mitsubishi Evo 6.5 the following year, which we raced and won in New Zealand, and came and did a couple of rallies here in the US. The gentleman was an incredibly generous person, unfortunately led by some not so generous people, and they consumed $5 million of his money in about 2.5 years. Wow. And he sold off all the assets he had left and washed his hands and walked away. He held the keys to the Mitsubishi 6.5, and we had done 1 or 2 races with Mitsubishi with a little bit of funding, and I was trying to, kind of get my own thing going again. So I leveraged off him a payment plan to buy this car with the hopes of building a relationship with Mitsubishi, of which 4 months later we did. He closed down, I absorbed some assets, and away I went kind of with my own program.
Now what's interesting, and I think it would be helpful if you kind of give the lay of the land in the racing world. A lot of racers, they race and they're part of a team. And like you were paid. But like you and Junior, guys like that, you guys do things a bit different. And I think your father kind of helped you along in this, where you're more on the business side. So for example, what's important about this and the business side and how you go about racing? Yeah, for sure.
Obviously I mentioned my father gave me a couple of cars when I was younger, but that was physically it. And that was, an incredible opportunity as a starting point, something I couldn't have been able to afford and achieve at that age. But a car is just an object. If you don't have money, you can't buy tires, you can't buy gas, you can't travel to the event, you can't pay the entry fees, can't pay for the hotels, and you can't go racing. So my racing career probably took 8 to 9 years before it blossomed to something where I could make some money. but it was led by my father's advice, which was racing as a hobby, focus on a career, and if you have the opportunity to turn that hobby into a profession, then all the better. And I respected that advice. I cursed him many nights because he had all the tools and he could put me in a car, but as he earned it himself, he wanted me to grow a passion and earn it for myself. So I focused on the business, again leveraging his name with the Toyota brand and reaching out to Lexus models with their association. We designed body kits and built more exhausts for Celicas and ISs and GSs and so forth, and that came the foundation of the company, making hundreds of aftermarket parts and accessories and making a respectable income and spending a respectable amount of that profit to go racing on the weekends for myself.
So let's just take stock here. Before you are building Veloster turbo race cars for a global rallycross champion and campaigning for Hyundai, you were building parts for Toyotas and selling them, and that's how you funded yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Backing up a little bit further, I worked in my father's machine shop. I ran the lathes and the mills, and I was surrounded by some of the most talented engineers and fabricators in the world. So you just absorbed everything that you were surrounded by. That enabled me to start my own division, and then again doing exactly the same as what I was doing for him, but for myself, and then extended that into partners that we had that had injection molding machines and so forth, and made parts and accessories for the models that I was racing, or the brand that I was racing, or in that case early on and what my father was racing, until I created my own identity, come in with the Evo 6.5 here. So Mitsubishi was probably the first combination to establish a dynamics of the two of them working alongside of each other. Aftermarket parts and accessories for street cars with the Mitsubishi Evo, and then going ahead and racing the Mitsubishi Evo. So we had kind of found that neutral ground of supporting both divisions of the company. I had my outlet of making money in parts and design and art that I enjoyed, and then the thrill of going out and racing the cars that you designed and built, and then that passion for the driving kind of superseded the desire to build the parts and so forth, and it kind of unbalanced it, and now we're maybe more of a racing company than we are of an aftermarket parts company.
But you've been working out of the same facility for years. This place in Huntington Beach, I came down and saw you at.
Yeah, yep. It started off in my father's company. I purchased my own building in 1999, which is the main building for where we're at now.
You purchased a building when you were 21?
Yep.
Wow.
A little older than that, yeah. Good one. And then we have another division now, and then down the street we have another division which is composite. So effectively everything is done in-house outside of the engine program that is still drawn upon the skill set of Europe. But effectively everything is done in-house now in Huntington Beach.
But Mitsubishi was really your first brand deal. Like UPRD, you were paid as a driver and they did everything else. This is you as a brand deal and you are the racing company behind it.
Yeah, exactly, and that's when I took that over. You see the GX Planet there. You see a small UPRD on the car, and then we brought that back into my own control. So I'm very blessed to have had the relationship with Javier, who owned the company, and we still stay in contact now. Yeah. It was just a forced opportunity. He wanted to merge the two companies. I looked at his books and didn't want anything to do with his business model, and figured out a means of gaining assets that could continue myself down my career and my passion.
Now, did you say forced opportunity?
What's that?
Did you say forced opportunity?
Forced.
Forced opportunity.
Forced.
Forced. Okay, that's the Kiwi thing.
Yeah.
So it's funny you say forced opportunity. What's this?
I don't know, but if I'm
the wheels are not
down,
in the right
I'm still
direction.
in the lead at that point. That's all that matters. That's actually a classic picture. That is, wow, that's 2003.
Yeah.
That's in Laughlin at the international rally that they had there. That's my good friend Stefan Verdier in the blue Subaru to the right, who was...
With the wheels in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. And that is a 2.5 second roll that put the car back on the wheels and won the event. actually car looked very similar to that shot of the Mazda MX-6. Similar environment. Apparently, some years later, I still didn't learn everything.
But who won that race?
We did, surprisingly enough. And my navigator actually punched me after we landed on the wheels, and she's about 5'2". She's actually the navigator now for Travis Pastrana and the US Rally Championship.
Yeah.
Fantastic young lady, and she's like, we had a 2-minute lead. You had 3 corners to go. Why the beep did you do that? That's what I got, followed by a punch.
Did you
Luckily, we landed on the wheels, physically lost 2.5 to 3 seconds, and finished the event for the checkered flag.
Did you take her for a ride in the murder van as well?
No, I did not. It was all very professional.
Okay, speaking of professional, before there was a Formula D, there was a Falcon Drift show.
Yeah, Falcon Drift Show Off, I think it was called.
Yeah.
And that was held at Irwindale Speedway in the parking lot. Before we actually went down on the infield, as drifting is known now on the House of Drift, Irwindale Speedway, Falcon had a promotional event out in the parking lot, and they brought over some of these drivers from Japan that were called drifters. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but we took the rally car there, still covered in dirt from the last event, still with gravel tires on it, and still high up in the air, and everyone looked at us like, you can't do that, the thing's going to roll over. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We do this all the time. You guys just haven't paid attention to what rallying is. And apparently I hadn't paid attention to what drifting was at the point. That was 2003. Went out and qualified first in this 4-wheel drive rally car at a drift event, and everyone was kind of scratching their head because we were doing things with a 4-wheel drive car.
Yeah, 4-wheel drive.
That you couldn't do. You could back it in really big and then come out a lot more acceleration and so forth, but the dynamics didn't work between the 2 different models. They then sat us down in a driver's meeting and said, well, now we're going to do tandem. And I'm like, what is tandem? They're like, well, 2 cars are going to go at the same time. The Japanese lead guy is going to follow you first, and then you're going to follow him. And I'm like, I'm out. I am out. This is not happening. This is my baby. I am not going to have this guy crash into me. So we withdrew from the event, and someone else ended up taking our place and going on. But I sat back and I watched the skill set of these Japanese drivers and the way that they could entertain the crowd, and the crowd appreciation for what they were doing as craftsmen behind the wheel, balancing these cars in proximity to each other, proximity to the crowd, and just the way that they handle the cars. And again, flickered the switch back to the business standpoint, and I was like, this is captivating to the audience. This audience is paying attention to the cars that they're driving, the parts that are on the cars, and this is an amazing marketing opportunity. Drag racing in the import world had been around for a while, and I had no desire to push the pedal and go in a straight line. So I was like, okay, rallying was dying off, all the manufacturers were pulling out, and this was the next opportunity. So we got into drift, and we did it in a non-traditional way. Looked at it again from a business standpoint, called up General Motors, saw that they were releasing the GTO, went to SEMA, met with them again, and then followed it up a couple of months later with a trip and a presentation deck to Detroit, and stood in front of 14 GM execs and said, you need to go drifting. And that is the vehicle of choice. And a year later, we won the championship.
But this was a good car to do this. I mean, explain what this was. This thing was awesome. Rear-wheel drive, V8. No one else was really doing that at the time.
Yeah, exactly. When I say non-traditional, everything was 2-liter, also turbocharged 4-cylinder engines. You could make a respectable amount of horsepower, but you made it in the very high RPM. Meant a lot of wheel speed, a lot of revs. Enter a V8, torque, you had more control, you could be smoother with your inputs, and we really revolutionized the sport of what drifting is today. As a foundation, pretty much every car, even if you're in a Japanese car that doesn't come with a V8, you're going to have a V8 in it to be competitive. So it was, it was remarkable to, to step back, take a clean slate and approach to the sport, and 3 events later come out and start winning with it.
And you were really kind of the only one out there in a car like that. Like, I think Junior came in 2005 with a Mustang, but this was 4. You came in with the
right.
GTO.
We proved the point with the combination, and then Dodge followed with the Viper, and Ford followed with the Mustang. And again, now you kind of have an eclectic group of cars, but the foundation is really based around the torque application. That was the key to success in the sport.
Yeah. Now, Rhys, you don't know this about me. I have a soft spot in my heart for Pontiacs. I've had a few Pontiacs. I know what a Pontiac looks like. Last I checked, that's not a Pontiac.
No, that is a '69 Dodge Charger. And that is on set in 2005 in Louisiana for Dukes of Hazzard. Had the opportunity through the racing, really, randomly, and the rallying. Prior to that, I got called by a group that said, we're from a studio, we're shooting a movie, we have a scene in the movie that is going to be based around rally cars. I was like, okay. I had small dabbles in the film industry at that point, and they said, we want to come down and see your collection of rally cars and just kind of get an understanding for where we're going to go from an art directing standpoint and so forth. So they came down. In our showroom, we had a loop video of drifting going on. As they were walking through the door, I made sure that it was on me driving. And randomly they asked, who's driving that? And I'm like, oh.
You don't say.
Yeah, well, funny you mentioned that. So we got past the nuts and bolts of what they were there for, and on the way out they mentioned, what are you doing tomorrow? Nothing, it was a Saturday, and they're like, Warner Brothers Studios, we're doing a rehearsal for this movie. We're bringing out some of Hollywood's top drivers, stunt drivers, to audition for the part of driving the lead vehicle. I was like, sounds cool. They still didn't mention anything of what it was, and do you think you could bring your race car, your drift car up and do a demonstration and maybe try driving this vehicle that we're going to have? Pretty excited, butterflies in the chest, and loaded up the race car and went up there, and they had Hollywood's finest stood up in a line. I even brought my dad out as well, because I was like, well, if I'm not going to get this, he is, because he's pretty good. And then they roll out this car that was not painted or anything. It was just this rusty old bomb. Yeah. And it just so happened to be, they said, you're here to audition for the part of driving the General Lee for the new Dukes of Hazzard movie. Yeah. I had been 6 years old plus, sitting, laying on the floor with my chin in my hands Friday night at 7 o'clock every night in New Zealand, watching the Dukes of Hazzard. And
it was Friday night in New Zealand as well.
Yeah, and dreamed of driving the General Lee. My dad was a rally car driver, and all of a sudden here I was living in the US, and this opportunity had been presented to me, so there was no way that I was going to lose this battle. We lined it up. Everyone got to drive the car and perform their maneuvers. They set up like 3 or 4 different staged stunts, and 2 days later I got the call.
Got the call. That's funny. I've watched Dukes of Hazzard. I think, how many of you guys have watched Dukes of Hazzard? You guys all watched Dukes of Hazzard? A couple of years. I know they sound funny in that, but they don't sound like the way you talk.
Yeah, they're good old boys down there.
So
I actually married a Southern girl. She's from North Carolina.
Wow.
She doesn't quite have a twang like that, but yeah.
So were you Bo or Luke Duke?
I was Bo Duke. I had to wear this awesome blonde wig that I was told cost $3,000, and it was so hot and scratchy I was chucking it on the dashboard after every take. And then they gave me like a $200 wig because they saw how I was treating the $3,000 wig. But yeah, for 2.5 months in Louisiana, that was my job.
Yeah.
Hop up, put on a Bo Duke costume. Gosh, can't remember what the T-shirt was then. Put on this wig and go drive the General Lee 6 days a week for 2.5 months.
I think you need to change the livery of your global rallycross car. I think that would shake some. So
Should we keep the flag on the roof or maybe lose the flag?
Jim, what do you think? Get the lamb chops in there.
Yeah.
Generally livery. We're all set.
Perfect. Ironically enough, just the start of this year, some of you may have seen it or not, Auto Trader did a new campaign with the original cast. And I got asked to come back and drive the car, so it was quite cool. So
you got
went back
two
down
chances to drive General Lee?
Yeah. So went back down there and did that with the original cast, and that was quite fun to work on set with those guys.
That's awesome. Now, you weren't just working. You brought it up that you met a lovely lady from North Carolina. My guess is you did not go to North Carolina at some drift event and meet her there. How did you meet your wife?
Wow. My wife, Presley, randomly we met, randomly in Las Vegas. I'm not going to sit on that and pause for too long because I know where everyone's minds will go. How do I present this? A year prior, I was working on Tokyo Drift, Fast and the Furious 3. And my best friend was working on Talladega Nights and in Charlotte area and so forth, actually 2 or 3 of my good friends. And my one buddy, Rich, called me up and he's like, you should have taken this job. There's a girl down here that is totally your type. And I'm like, well, that doesn't do any good. She lives there, I'm here, she's there, blah, blah, blah. And just thanks for calling, but you know, I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, really appreciate that. Yeah. Some friend.
And a year later, I get a call to work on a shocking movie, but an amazing opportunity to drive a great level of cars was a movie called Redline. If any of you saw it, it had Eddie Griffith in it. He crashed the Enzo at doing a PR thing at Irwindale. But an amazing opportunity to drive a high level of cars, twin-turbo Saleen S7, Carrera GT, which you couldn't get me out of, Enzo Ferrari, which, to be honest, felt like a Mack truck. Wow. But we did some amazing driving. I think the highest speed record on film was set in the Valley of Fire, just north of Las Vegas, at 167 mile an hour, 3 cars side by side on a 2-car road. And as I accepted that job, I go in to get my, your per diem, and you get your room key, and this young production coordinator is helping me out, and I'm like, oh, she's cute, don't pay any attention to it. Thank you for my information, see you in the morning. In the morning, we're talking, and she's like, oh, you're the stunt driver? Yeah. She's like, oh, I worked on Talladega Nights, these guys, blah, blah, blah. And I started putting 2 and 2 together, and I'm like, I think I've heard of you. So I'm like, well, my buddy Rich said I should have, so I'm going to pay a bit more attention to this. 2 weeks later, I asked her out on a date, and 2 years later, we got married.
Wow.
So he was right.
He was right. So he was a good friend.
So if it all goes wrong, I'm going to blame him, but so far, so good. We now have a 5-year-old daughter, and
what's his
happily
name?
married.
Your buddy's name?
Rich.
Big round of applause for Rich.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, we like that. Okay, and on this Jewish holiday, that is called a mitzvah. That's what Rich has done for you. Yes.
My car does that every now and then. It's like a
the roll.
misfire.
But before you met your wife, I believe you were hanging out with rock stars or movie stars.
Yes, that would be on set of Dukes of Hazzard, and that is Johnny Knoxville, who played Luke Duke. And not that we had too many days together, but we had many nights together, and that boy is a rock star.
Literally.
And I was single back then too,
yeah.
And I made sure the accent was really thick.
You did the old trick where you on one side of the bar, he's on the other, and you said, what do you want to drink?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's like a net. Yeah, I see how you guys work. Okay, so it wasn't just that GTO.
No, the GTO was the start of a 5-year relationship with GM.
Yeah.
And once we had won the championship, we kind of designed what was going to be the next winning combination. The rules were relatively free, and we looked at weight as the advantage, and we looked at the Pontiac Solstice as the key vehicle to kind of continue that winning era. GM had extensive development from the drag racing world with the 2.4-liter Ecotec engine. And then we basically recalibrated it for a smaller turbocharger. It used to make 1,300 horsepower and would do about 4 runs down the quarter mile. We needed to do a little bit more than that, so we backed it down to about 600 horsepower. And at that point, in that combination, that car was untouchable, going on to do its first year of competition in 2007, and then win the Drifting World Championships with it and finished third in the Formula Drift Championship 2008.
How much horsepower?
About 650, but
650.
the block was capable of making 1,300, which they ran in drag race trim.
See, this is where I'm starting to agree with you, where I think the Redline 600A was a bad choice. Because I had a Saturn Sky Redline. It didn't have 600 horsepower.
Yeah,
No.
no. It was a pretty impressive little car, and it's a car I still retain.
I love these things.
In the
Oh, that is in your shop. I
it's
took
in my
that
shop.
picture.
Yep.
Yeah. Can
Yep.
I borrow that?
Sure.
Yeah.
You figure out how to start it, and you can run it.
Oh, I'll get it going. Don't
And
worry
you
about
need to find a gas station with E85 because that's what it ran on too.
I love that thing, man. And then here's you on your hero card for Pontiac.
Yeah, that is. That's going back a little bit.
Now, this is, just so we understand, this is 2008, 2009 timeframe. So what was going on in the overall world at that point?
In our world,
Just, like economics.
yeah. We had an amazing relationship with GM. 5 years. We had built out the program to be successful. We had built new relationships with Red Bull. After winning the championship in 2005, we started a relationship with Red Bull in 2006. They would be really upset at the collar logo right there because Sparko embroidered it wrong, and they're very detailed on their logos.
Yeah.
So hopefully that doesn't get too much
So your
airtime right
relationship
there.
with Red Bull was way before Global Rallycross.
Yes. We're coming on next year. Would be 10-year relationship with Red Bull.
Yeah. His office is like a shrine to Red Bull soda. There's like tons of these things.
There's a few bits and pieces in there,
Yeah.
yeah. So, we had built out, the program to secondary title sponsors and primary title sponsors. And the program was moving along really, really well. The aftermarket division of the company had shrunk because the Pontiac brand wasn't as popular for parts and accessories, say, as the Mitsubishi brand was, but the motorsport had kind of balanced it out on sponsorship money that we're able to achieve. And then midway through 2008, the economy started to change, and we got a phone call in September from GM that they were in a rough position and that they were terminating all of their motorsport contracts going forward for 2009. Luckily, 6 months earlier, I felt this coming on, and the business side of me was already paying attention to what the world economy was doing, and I had seen this brand that didn't have a rear-wheel drive sports car and really didn't have a sports car release a car in Detroit as a rear-wheel drive V6 sports coupe, and that was Hyundai with the Genesis coupe. And I started knocking on the door of Hyundai. They're 3 miles down the road from the shop, and I was like, here's an opportunity to build an association with a new brand, not knowing where GM was going to be. 6 months later, that decision was kind of made for me, and randomly, I'd already made the steps forward with Hyundai to build a SEMA show car for them at the end of 2008. And that was the first opportunity to be where we're at today.
And then that turned into this.
Yeah. And met an incredible young man who was very enthusiastic within Hyundai that, gosh, I'd probably almost say put his job on the line to convince Hyundai that they needed to do that, and we needed to do that, which was Miles Johnson, and he took the lead through.
Miles Johnson was the one that was. Wow.
Yep. So he.
Okay, hold. I'm going to stop here for a minute. Okay, I know this is a little bit inside baseball. Anybody who's in the automotive journalism world knows Miles Johnson. He is a legend.
Miles.
Hi, Miles. Yeah. I think. Okay, so I don't know, guys. I don't think that's a very good idea. Does that sound like him?
That's very, very good. That's incredible, actually.
Yeah. You got to do me a salad.
He's
here,
very
Rhys.
positive.
Yeah, we got to do this on the cheap. You got to do me a salad, quick and dirty.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
but thank you to Miles Johnson, because wow. I had
owe
no
everything
idea.
today to him and obviously others, but that was the initial starting point.
He too is a surfer. He too lives in Huntington Beach. He just got married. Big round of applause for Miles Johnson.
Yeah. So we Hyundai has this great program supporting all the aftermarket supporters for SEMA show car builds. where they'll either give you a dollar vehicle or they'll give you a set amount to go build a vehicle. They, look through the proposals and pick the winners, award the winners, and then you're part of their presentation on the floor at SEMA. We got awarded one of those builds. I grouped my staff together at that point and said, look, guys, I need you to put every effort that you can. I'm going to put every dollar that I can into building this amazing SEMA show car, because it's an opportunity to build out a new relationship, because in 4 months' time, I don't have anything for you. We're closing shop. Parts and accessory sales had also changed within that year, and motorsport going away with the relationship with GM. So we took every opportunity that we could to put our best foot forward and make an incredible car. The car was very well received and enough to build momentum into turning it into a program for the following year. Wow.
And so this is you with that car. But that was not the only car you campaigned.
Yeah, so within the career of drifting, that was the SEMA show car, and then we built another car basically around that we finished out 5 years in the sport of drifting. We only ever had one car. Have to talk to marketing why we ever only had one car. We never had a backup car. Always wanted one, but never got one.
We got to get on that, Jim.
We did 5 years winning multiple events, finishing third in the championship in 2012, and really turning around the image in the industry for how people perceive the Hyundai product. We took a pretty much stock standard V6 engine, turbocharged it, and using 90% stock components made 750 horsepower and 750 foot-pounds of torque.
Out of that 3.8?
Yeah.
Wow.
Stroked slightly to 4.1 litres, but using nearly everything, stock head gaskets, everything stock. And really proved the strength and the reliability of the Hyundai engine, beating on 900 horsepower, specially built Roush Ford engines in the Mustangs. And we would go and talk about our numbers, and they're like, there's no way you're making that much power, until we were standing on top of the podium, and they're like, I guess you are. So, in a short period of time, we turned the tables on Hyundai's perception of Hyundai as a performance brand, and kind of being the black sheep. It was, the underdog. It was great to be able to do that. And we extended that program out, building what was called the PM580 for Pikes Peak, a Daytona prototype version of the Hyundai Genesis Coupe, which had 900 horsepower, specially designed to run up Pikes Peak now that it's an all-paved road.
So now let's kind of bring this full circle. Your dad did this in a heavily modified something that said Celica, and now you're doing your own. This is your own project. Yeah, it was a great opportunity to step out of production-based cars and have a vehicle that I could influence on design and work with my engineers and my fabricators to build a car. You're more in tune to what you envisioned a real race car to be. Is it the norm for race car drivers to set up their own cars?
No, not really. With my personality, it's all I've known, and it's hard to step away from it.
Yeah.
But it gives me a greater sense of understanding of what the vehicle's doing underneath me. If as loud as it is in these race cars, every noise has a place, and if one of those noises is out of place, I can detect it, and I can save an engine failure, I can save a suspension failure, or so forth, because I'm so in tune to every vibration, every noise that car makes. Yeah. Even though I might be jumping into 2 or 3 of our cars, I know them so well. And that enables me to give great feedback with the engineers as well, and what we've done this year with the Hyundai Veloster and Global Rallycross, turned it into a championship-winning car, beating, in the Andretti's and so forth. So it's not the normal route, but based on my background of starting and building my own cars, it's part of what I'm familiar with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now this, I saw in the shop, you have 2 of these things.
Yeah, they don't look like that all the time, but yeah, they look like that in between events. That is the Veloster Turbo.
And let's prove that it's a turbo.
Yep, and there's
that
the turbo.
Turbo is like...
Yeah, it's pretty big, yeah. Supported by Garrett turbochargers, a little plug. Yeah. And that's the car that we currently campaign in the Global Rallycross, the Red Bull Global Rallycross Championship.
Yeah.
4-cylinder. That image is actually of the Genesis coupe engine, the Lambda V6. But yeah, 4-cylinder turbocharged engines, around 45 to 48 pounds of boost. On a
yeah. What does a street car normally put out boost?
Standard street car is probably 12 to 14 pounds of boost.
In today's day and age,
yeah.
48 pounds.
We're making 3.5 bar of boost, yeah, which is a lot. 2 liter per restrictions, 45 millimeter restrictor on the turbocharger per rules restrictions. Weight of 2868. And a tire contact patch no wider than a 235 per the rules. And these cars will do 1.90 to 60. The acceleration is just incredible, full drive.
Does the rules dictate the weight as well?
Yes, yeah.
So you couldn't like make it a 2,000-pound car?
You would have to ballast it up, but yeah.
Wow.
So that's the current cars. It's incredible. We just finished Seattle last weekend, where we qualified third, 0.024 out of second place. Won the first heat race, and then the driver choked in the first semifinal and stalled the car in third gear. I have to have a talk to him. And started off the back of the grid in 10th place and worked our way up to 5th. But prior to that, we had won Los Angeles the round before, and we'd won Daytona the round before that. So the cars are incredibly good position right now, and they're not getting any slower. Just got to make sure the driver doesn't make any mistakes.
I guarantee you, if that driver drove a car in General Lee livery and had the lamb chops,
he'd win every event.
Because think about it, he'd intimidate everybody.
For sure.
Yeah. They wouldn't know what to do.
I'm with you on that.
I'm going with that. I'm telling you. I'm standing behind that. So here you are. Let's take stock again. You won Formula Drift Championship when?
2005, runner-up 2006, and 2007.
And Global Rallycross?
In 2012, we were second in manufacturers' points and third in drivers, and we sat out one race because it was a race that was added to the championship, and Hyundai wouldn't give me another 50 grand to go to it.
We may have to talk with Miles on that one. Miles, I don't know, guys. I don't know. I don't think it's a good idea. But then Pikes Peak.
In 2012 was a great year.
2012 was a good year for you.
Yeah, we as a company, Rhys Millen Racing, we contested 3 different championships, 3 different model cars, all Hyundai branded. We set an overall world record at Pikes Peak. We got 3rd in the drifting championship. And we got 3rd in the drivers' points and 2nd in manufacturers for Global Rallycross. So 3 championships that we were contesting, and we finished on the podium all 3.
So maybe when the Mayans were predicting the apocalypse, it was a Kiwi coming here and dominating racing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 2012.
There you go.
But even with all that, you still have time to do your side job.
Yeah, the good old side job. TV commercials.
Not a bad side job. Makes
up remarkably about 150 days a year.
Really?
A lot of filming. It is incredible how much, manufacturers pour into marketing efforts, and every time that they promote a new model, there might be a slight fascia change or a wheel and tire change. They've got to document that in footage. Yeah. So within the relationship and the skill set that a group of us have on a team that we have for stunt driving called Drivers Inc., we do primarily the bulk of commercial driving. Mercedes, Dodge, Chevrolet, Honda, BMW, Porsche, you name it, driving a lot of different cars. This was a campaign that we got to do in Cape Town, South Africa, about 2.5 months ago. It was for the new M Series, or the 3 M Series, whatever you want to call it, BMW. 5 drivers down there in identical vehicles in the streets of Cape Town for a campaign called Drift Mob, BMW Drift Mob.
So you closed a circle, a traffic circle, for like 2 days.
Yeah. Yeah,
And you and there's Di in there. Who else is in there?
Yeah, you had Samuel Hubernett, past champion in drifting, and competed against him a couple of years ago in Rallycross. You had Dai Yoshihara, past champion in drifting. You had Conrad Grunwald, a current driver in the Chevy Camaro and drifting. Yeah, my buddy Rich in the green there, the one who I blame my married life for.
Oh, that's the Rich. All
Rich
right.
in the green there.
There you
yep.
go.
Yeah, the coordinator and the second unit director, Mick Rogers, who was actually the original director for Fast and the Furious 1. So, yeah, an amazing group of talent, and just an incredible opportunity to be hanging out with great people in amazing locations.
Yeah. And this, so going back to this picture, this actually wasn't in the circle.
No, this was a setup. So for 2 days we rehearsed, choreographed all the moves. There was quite a few maneuvers of cars kind of going in unison and then opposing directions, and cars going forward 180s, reverse 180s with myself sliding between them. Everything was rehearsed in a parking lot off-site, set to the same scale radius to play with the cars. The cars were pre-production, as most of them are, that you're given, and you're always asked to do a performance level of an 11 with a car that's maybe a 3 or a 4. The engine was incredible, but some of the standard features in the differential were not spec'd on all of the cars, so we ended up welding up the differentials and doing a hydraulic handbrake, but the rest of the cars were as they were.
So let's take this from the top. BMW flies you to South Africa, closes a traffic circle, gives you and your hooligan buddies 4 pre-production cars, gives you another place they close to go sideways, then they close this public traffic circle for 2 days, and that's your side job.
And they employed 200 background people to make it look like it was a live circle.
Yeah.
And they planned it 4 months earlier in Chile, but there was an earthquake and a fire in the town that we were supposed to do it, so they had to ship everything to Cape Town. So, yeah, it probably cost them a couple of bucks.
Wow. You guys, this is online. You can see this. This is an amazing film. I would highly suggest watching it here. Now, a guy that races these 700 horsepower Velocitors and has this as a side job, what do you have in your garage?
My garage at home, I don't have much. My garage at the shop is everything that is meaningful. Either I have raced or what brings me back to my roots. Yeah, in the case of a car that was never sold in the US, although the model as a 2-door coupe was sold here in the US. It's a 1973 Mazda RX-3 4-door sedan. They sold the 2-door coupe here in the US. This was the car that really kind of was my first connection to speed, racing, and noise. And it has an amazing noise. It's a 13B peripheral port rotary engine that revs to 10,000 RPM. And when I was 4 or 5 being drugged to the races, that's what my dad was rallying. And so the opportunity to be older and kind of want that connection, I'm building a replica of his car.
And there's the motor of the car. Motor of the car. That is not exactly a drift car, now is it?
No, that is a 58 Nomad Impala that is one day going to be the family surfmobile, but it's up on top of the rack, not getting any attention.
Okay. I don't know if you're aware of this, but I drove a new Hyundai down to see you. Yep. And it seems as if Hyundais, when they grow up, they want to be your Hyundai.
Nice, yes. We have a few spare parts. Global Rallycross is not kind on front and rear bumpers, and neither is the competition.
I was thinking of actually taping that to the front of the car and giving the car back like that, but I don't think Jim or Miles would go for that.
No, they'll go for it. Yeah. Miles might complain a little bit.
With that, what an amazing journey. Big round of applause for Rhys Millen.
Thank you.
So this is the part of the program where we have you guys ask the questions, and while you guys are finishing up your little comment cards, we have the lovely Brittany will collect your comment cards and bring them around to me. But before that, I wanted to share some news with you, and I wanted to share some news with our studio audience as well as our live streamed audience. It's actually some exciting news, but bittersweet at the same time. The museum, very exciting, is going through a major renovation. And over the past, We've been doing this here since July of 2013, and my first guest was Ralph Gilles, who Sam Hubinet would drift for.
Yep.
And we did Targa Newfoundland together, hence the reason why I'm wearing this shirt.
I forgot.
Because I want to race with you in your uncle's race, the
Sounds
Targa
good.
New Zealand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jim is going to give us a Hyundai. He said before the show he's going to give us one. We're going to go down. Actually, two. Maybe you drive one, I drive another.
Perfect.
And I'll find, maybe Miles will be my co-driver.
He can find the funding for sure.
Yeah, oh, he can. That guy can definitely find funding. So here's Ralph in our first show, and then we've had Bob Lutz. We've had Parnelli Jones talk about a guy who sets up his own race car and knows the business as a race car driver. We had Peter Brock, another racer,
Incredible
fantastic
talent.
guy.
Yep.
Here is Peter Brock with one of the board members of the museum, Bruce Meyer, who's an amazing car guy, has a couple of fantastic race cars himself. And there's John Morton, talk about great race car drivers. This man basically mopped the floor with Alfa and Porsche's ass in racing back in the 70s with a Datsun. Kind of basically did what you're doing now with Hyundai. And then there's your buddy Junior.
Yep.
Junior wanted to do something different. He decided to sign dashboards of cars.
Nice.
Yeah. And then there's Junior again with his classic stance. He likes to pose, that guy, I think.
He kind of does the guitar strum and pulls it back.
Yeah, I think you should stand up through the whole thing.
He has the RTR brand, right? It's
yeah.
Ready to rock.
Another great businessman race car driver.
Yep.
Vaughn Gittin Jr.
I taught him everything.
Henry Ford III we've had. Tom Peters, chief designer and chief of the Camaro and Corvette. So he is the man that has made them look the way they are today. And then we've had everybody from literally the design director of Hot Wheels. This is Felix Holst.
Oh, yeah. I know
Yes.
Felix did quite a lot together with the Hyundai brand and Hot Wheels. I'm actually the blue driver.
You're the blue driver. So you and Tanner. Oh, now I see it.
Yeah, see?
Now
right
I see
there.
it.
Yeah.
It's amazing how this all kind of winds right back into you. Then recently we just had Hurley Haywood, most winning long-distance race car driver in the world. This guy is incredible behind the wheel because he is so calm. He's taught me how to race better, but when you see him drive, the guy, it's like he's going to get a cup of coffee, and yet he's going 200 miles an hour.
It's the way to be smooth, to be fast on the pavement.
Yes, that's exactly what he says. He's the Iceman cometh. But the museum is going through renovation. So the museum, in a year's time, will look like this.
Yeah, it's incredible. I saw a scale model downstairs.
Yeah,
It's
there is
gonna
one
be
downstairs.
remarkable.
You can see online what the museum will look like inside and outside. All of this is going to be this structure that looks like motion while the building is standing still. Big difference from being a Japanese department store, which is what the building was founded as, on the Miracle Mile here in Los Angeles. So with that, the exciting news is the museum is going to be going through renovation, but it is closing October 19th for 1 year. So in that time, we are going to be moving the show. We're going to continue with Inside the MotoMan studio. We're actually growing up. We're actually going to a real TV studio. Can you believe that?
Nice.
Yeah.
This is not a bad backdrop.
Not a
though.
bad backdrop at all. We are going to be moving to the YouTube Space Los Angeles, which, now there's a helicopter in that picture. That used to be the Hughes aircraft facility, and they used to manufacture those helicopters in that building. Now it's a fancy building. They've got everything from, you can bring your dog to work there. You can ride a bicycle that Google give you. Even the coffee person there, they ship her off to Greece to barista school to learn how to make coffee. That's the kind of place this is.
You know you're making some money when you can afford to do that.
Yeah, something tells me they're not racing cars and going sideways. Anyway, our next shows, and what we're going to be doing is a combination of shows at the YouTube Space Los Angeles, and we're going to take some of the show on the road. So for you guys that are not here in Los Angeles, we're going to travel to you. So the question is, who are going to be some of those upcoming guests? There's some people that you might know. Actually, the Hyundai brand knows this next guest very well. Matthew Becker. He is the chief engineer of Lotus and the man that tuned the current Hyundai Genesis. And then coming up is your buddy Tanner Faust. What is he, the red driver?
Yellow.
He's yellow.
Yeah.
He's yellow. Tanner will be coming up. And then I think there's some people...
Looks like a mug shot. It's a really appropriate shot you got there.
It is, isn't it?
He used to clean my pool.
He doesn't look that tough, though.
He's not. He's like 5'1",
Yeah.
156. Yeah.
Did you know this kid? He used to drift buses.
Yeah, he's pretty talented driver.
Yeah.
He's very fast.
Yeah. And then talk about Pontiac, the godfather of the GTO, Jim Wangers will be joining us. Very exciting to have him back. And then near and dear to this audience here is the former CEO of Hyundai Motor America, Mr. John Krafchick. So follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, for updates and when you could join us at the YouTube Space Los Angeles or when we come visit you on the road. And with that, the lovely Brittany, do you have questions? Big round of applause for the lovely Brittany. She is joining us. She is our intern this semester from Minnesota. She drives a Ford Focus that was fixed by her mother.
With a duct tape right window. What was it? Side mirror? Yeah.
It's side mirror, yeah. And we've neglected to say that her mother is the one that actually damaged the mirror.
Okay.
So she hands fixed it. That's good parenting, actually. I think so. Okay, so, sir, let's go. What is your favorite car to rally?
I'm definitely behind the wheel of it right now. The Veloster Turbo has been incredible. To have it in Seattle and its environment that it was designed for last weekend, in the gravel and the mud, there's no better feeling than to have the confidence in a vehicle that you can place it inch perfect on those conditions and varied conditions as well. We did a press media ride day with a 1.1 mile traditional gravel stage rally course through the trees. And that brought me back to 12 years of my original experience of rallying. And the car is just amazing. We're out beating the best that Ford can bring, the best that Volkswagen can bring. So, yeah, tick of the box, Hyundai Veloster, rallycross car.
You bring up the thing about the stage rallies. Do you miss the stage rallies?
You know, I hadn't until I got that taste doing that media ride. And funny enough, in that competition, was a really talented driver, David Higgins, who's won the US Rally Championship many times and British Rally Championship. And we used to compete against each other 12 years ago. First time competing against each other up in Seattle. I beat him. Did I mention that? And we got to reflect on here we are 12 years later still doing this. And he's still active in the world of stage rally, giving Subaru, I think, their 9th or 10th championship. And yeah, it's a world that I would love to be back in, but reflecting again on that business side of things, marketing needs to make sense. And for Hyundai, taking the best of what is stage rallying and putting it in a stadium environment with a sport such as the Red Bull Global Rallycross Championship, it makes sense to be where we are.
So I know I joked about this thing. Well, not really a joke, but I do want to do Targa New Zealand with you.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. Have you done a Targa?
I have done tarmac events, but not a full tarmac event like a Targa event. What they do in Newfoundland, in New Zealand, Australia, Tasmania, it's effectively a traditional rally, but it's all on backcountry streets, paved roads. And then they limit you on the amount of tires that you can use. So it's over 4 or 5 days, but you can only use like 6 tires. So there's an element of working with your co-driver and driving hard on all the stages, but obviously, you know, protecting your equipment and tire management as well. So it's a great opportunity. It keeps the cost down, but it also challenges you in different ways.
Here's a really interesting question here. Have you ever wrecked a car during a commercial shoot? That you weren't supposed to, I think. We should qualify that.
No, I never have. I have put a couple of little scratches on them before, but never actually wrecked. The film industry for TV commercials is a little different, and I treat it differently. Racing, you've got to give 100%. The opportunity to drive for film, you always have the opportunity to do something over. So to build the confidence in the people that you're driving for, the directors that you're driving for, or the camera operators that are around you. It's best just to build momentum. You're always going to have more than one take. So I never give anything more than 75 to 80%. And at that point, maybe the only give 50 or 60%. Because once you scare someone, if you're really close to them, or even if you hit a camera or hit an individual, as I've heard of it many times with some of these crazy guys that are out there, you'll never be asked back. So I've been doing it for 20 years now and never wrecked a car or never hit a camera.
Wow. Incredible story. Incredible journey. Big round of applause
Thank
for
you.
Rhys Millen. So with that, guys, once again, want to share with you the news that the museum will be shutting down for 1 year, starting October 19th. Inside the MotoMan studio for that time, we'll be going to the YouTube Space Los Angeles, which you probably have to just come by and check out the place.
Sounds
You can
amazing.
bring your own little dog there if you want to hang
for
out
sure.
with a dog, yeah. So join us on our upcoming guests. We've got Tanner Faust, your buddy, Jim Wangers, John Krafchek, and Matthew Becker. And then make sure you guys follow us on MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. What we're going to do now is go downstairs, and we're going to have an autograph signing with Mr. Millen here. Hopefully he gives us some time for that. And in the interim, I do want to thank the people here at the Petersen for putting this together for the past year and a half, especially Chris Brown and Sandy Scott. They have been instrumental in putting this together. Dana, who runs the collections here, Brian, Betsy, and Letitia, who do all the artwork stuff, and of course, Paige, Jerry, Juan, Joe, and Luis. Big round of applause to those guys as well. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you for joining us with Rhys Millen.
Thank you.